Hi, everyone. Welcome to Mentors on the Mic. Congratulations on Bang Bang and having it premiere at Tribeca. It's a very exciting week.
Super exciting.
Yes. So I have a couple questions for each of you. Thank you guys all for doing this. So let's start with Vincent. So the screenplay Bang Bang was written by Will Janowitz, who's an actor, actually. He actually went to Tribeca last year for a comedy short. And we've seen him around different things. How did this script come to you? I know you had a personal connection with the subject of the film.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and Will actually acts in Bang Bang. He plays
I missed that.
Dylan character who is Justin's boss.
Okay.
Um, and Will,
Oh,
yeah,
fun.
he's very he's a fantastic writer on top of actor. He was in Sopranos for many years.
Yes, he was.
But essentially, the script was given to me through a producer friend of mine, Jesse Ozeri, who I've known for a long time, and he's like, "Man, you love boxing, you got to read the script. It's really incredible." And lucky for me, I got it, and everything happened rather quick, which I know for filmmaking. I mean, one of those things like mentoring filmmakers in this business, it would be the hardest and the only hard part of this business is finding money for your films. And um, lucky for me, I had partnered up with a company that was relatively new to the business, and we had done one film prior together called What Josiah Saw, and it did well, and they got a taste of what it was like in the business, and so um, uh, they were looking to do something again. And so when you come across a script this strong, I went to them right away with it, and I think the script spoke for itself. We fell in love with it, and went from there and got it made. So that is a rare case. It's not normal.
Yeah,
It,
unrealistic. Yeah, it's a rare case for that to happen so quickly, but it's a testament to the writing, I guess. So, what about was the writing sort of consistent throughout? Did it change a lot over the course of filming, as it often does, or was it pretty much the script upon entering?
yeah, I mean, they'll say there's three steps to the movie: is the script, the shoot, and the editing,
Yeah,
and it's always evolving. That said, Will and I talked a lot in pre while we were trying to, you know, push the needle and uh, along and cast the film. We did little tweaks to it, like we definitely adjusted the script here and there, but as a whole, it sort of it was such a great foundation, and the characters were very deep, and yeah, didn't need a lot. Um,
yeah.
yeah,
Well,
so
I'll ask one more follow up to that before I move on for a sec. But I remember watching it, and as I'm watching the beginning credits, I saw that it said that you edited the film, which obviously directors are often integral in editing, but not usually solely credited as editing. As so, is that something you normally do? What's your relationship with editing, and why'd you choose to
yeah.
fully edit this?
No, I mean, that's a good question, and you're right. I mean, it's when I started my career, I didn't edit my first two films, but I think through that process and having edited short films that I did in the past, it just becomes to me, it's a part of directing. I felt it was a you waste a lot of time telling editors what it could be 5 frames of an edit, and stuff you would take 5 minutes or 10 minutes to do,
Yeah,
uh, you can do in 2 seconds. And I just felt confident enough to kind of take it on my own. And so the last few films I've done now, I've edited myself, and I consider it a part of filmmaking. It's a part of
it is.
directing, um, and it's part of to me. And that said, I definitely, my process is once I have a first cut that I'm comfortable sharing, I'll have like little mini screenings with trusted people, editors, actors, non-industry people, just to kind of get a pulse of what the movie's doing, and then go back in and keep editing and do that for a few months. And then
That's awesome. How long before that first edit is starting to screen?
you
Starting to
know, I'm pretty fast. So with
Yeah.
Bang Bang, I had it in a month. Like
Wow.
we
Okay.
did it.
That's fast.
And not to brag or toot my own horn, it's very fast, and that's my point, though. I think you can spend a lot of time sort of massaging something that really it's just like, i- if every director could edit, I would recommend it because there is such a it's just another process of directing and finding your movie.
Yeah. Did you feel like you had a lot of like in because you're an editor and you have that in mind, did that sort of inform how you directed in terms of like how many takes did you guys do and you know did you walk away with like so much content that that editing is a chore or were you able to go okay, well I have that vision, I know exactly what I want, I don't need to do many takes. How did that go?
Yeah, I mean, the mistake for me is I would say never shoot a scene thinking you need the whole scene perfect. I mean,
Mm.
you know, it's a lot of times you need to make sure you have every element of it, and that is really when you know you've got every element. If that takes 2 takes on somebody's coverage, you're good. Like, shoot a safety at least so you're not, you know, nowadays with digital, you can end up with a corrupted file. So you
Yeah.
shoot a backup or 2 maybe, but yeah, I mean, it's about piecemealing the movie together, and if you're you know, sometimes you get a take that's perfect throughout, sometimes you don't. Sometimes, you know, Tim screws his lines up all the time. What are you
Come
gonna
on,
do?
Tim. What? Come on. No. That actually goes then to my next
For the
question for
record,
Tim.
Tim is as
I
dialed
know.
in as you get, like, as an actor, like,
Yeah.
he'll come in and it's like a play. He knows everybody's line. He'll know Andrew's lines. So,
Well, I sort of on the same note, I heard Jeff Daniels speak at a SAG-AFTRA retrospective thing that he did, and he was talking about how the responsibility of being number 1 on the call sheet and how, every person who's number 1 kind of sort of in some ways with the director, of course, dictates like how it's done, right? So he said some people will come on set and be like, I need to do as many takes as I can to get it. And he's not like that. He's 1 or 2 or 3 tops, and he's like, we have to move on. That's how he kind of does it. Tim, does that work for you too? How is it on your end? Obviously, again, with a collaboration with the director, with Vincent, but how are you on set? How do you want to do many takes? Or you kind of like it's important to do 1 or 2 and 3, move on? What's your thought process?
I'll let others talk about how I am on set.
Fair.
Um, but I'm fine doing 1 or 2 takes if we have it, but sometimes you don't have it in one. And I think Jeff would probably say the same thing. I'm sure Jeff has gone up to 3 or 4 or 5 takes when that's what's required. But
Right.
like Jeff, I would say often I'll say when afforded the option to move on or do you want another, if at all possible, I'll say let's move on because you want other actors to have their time.
Yeah.
I was lucky enough to work with the young actor Richard Madden, on
Mm.
a movie or on a mini series called Klondike. Uh, and I'd probably, I don't know, done 70 films at that point, something like that. And he was the best number 1 on a call sheet I'd ever seen. We were in Alberta in the middle of winter. It was absolutely miserable. And the guy was not only utterly professional, knew his material inside and out, but he was just a great leader of the acting corps and by example helped set a tone for the whole project. And I really learned from that. And I had never been number 1 on a call sheet at that point. And then a few years later, I started happening a lot. And I owe so much to Richard, who was probably, I think he'd done Game of Thrones, and that's pretty much it. And then he was given the lead in this miniseries. So you never know who's going to surprise you, and from whom you're going to learn. But there you go. And I'd worked with a lot of other uh, actors who were the lead in a film who didn't express themselves in that way. But I think Jeff's right. You do help set a tone. And there's a lot of responsibility that comes with that, particularly on an independent movie in which resources are scarce and every minute is costly.
Yeah, absolutely. So my next question for you then, Tim, is how did this project come to you?
Um, I got a text from my agent that said, "We have this movie. Don't do it." uh, I read
Oh,
everything.
agents.
Uh, I read everything, and I'm still with that agent, and I love her. And they're very protective, but sometimes they have an inflated view of who and what I am. I'll just put it that way. And I loved the script, and then it was really about meeting Vince, because I didn't know that I was necessarily suitable for the role, because I'm a little guy, slight of build, and I don't have the mentality of a boxer. And so I wanted to talk that through with Vincent and expose these feelings to him, and listen to what he had to say. And he was quite cogent in his response, and just in terms of assuring me that um, he could help get me there. And so that combined with my deep appreciation for the writing in the script, I think that Will Janowitz wrote a real gem of a script here. Uh, and the challenge that every actor wants, and this was an enormously challenging role, but also having Vince as my guide, as a boxer himself, um, and was going to create the space for me to be able to go and train. His producers assured me that they would be amenable to that, and so I jumped in to the deep end, with Vince as my life preserver.
Oh.
It's always a little too risky, like, as much as I definitely was confident in Tim's abilities and obviously his dedication, it is a little nerve-wracking because look, we're taking on a sort of character study story here about a fighter, and I highly respect boxers and their what goes into prepping for fights and sort of their legacy and what they're left with after in their aftermath of their career. And so it was really important to do it right, because if there's a false note in Tim's just how he moves, it can get called out, and God forbid, like, if Tim didn't deliver with the fighting abilities at all, and we're on set and it's just like, oh shit, like, it's just not it. It just doesn't work. And luckily for us, like, Tim really went there, and so did Glenn and Andrew. Um,
I think
everybody
it's
in tip top.
I think it's helpful, since this is a podcast, to reveal, and we haven't. I don't know. Maybe people are going to get after me for saying this, but I think I was. But because you're talking to people who are interested in doing this for a living, it's really good to hear things like what I'm about to say, so that folks aren't discouraged. I think I was the
Mm.
fifth choice for this role. They went through four actors who, uh, I think at least four. I know of three. Um,
Yeah, we might as well say, if I don't
well, there
remember.
was Andrew Dice Clay,
Yeah,
Mm.
there was Buscemi,
yeah,
and
you're right.
there was Sam Elliott, and I think there was somebody
Oh.
else.
No,
James Caan as well.
I'm sorry.
Sorry?
Oh,
James Caan.
oh, James Caan.
Oh, that was before I was ever involved. That was a few years. That was like a few years
Oh.
before, and that movie fell apart. But when I got
And
involved,
all of these actors, for different reasons, said no. Um, and I think at least two of them, I'm certain, said, it's too much work. I don't want to, it would take so much work for me to get from who and what I am to what
Mm.
this role needs. And I thank God that they said that, and that the other two or three, however many, refused for their reasons, because to me, at least, that amount of work, if, as I said, you trust your director and you're afforded the space to do that work, that's why I'm doing this still at the age of 59, or 60 now. But uh, as Dracula Flo says, I live for this. Um, anyway, you probably don't know who Dracula Flo is, but you can look it up.
Well, I mean, I appreciate you saying that because, I mean, as from the actor's perspective, I'm very much aware of how many auditions sometimes it takes to get that thing, and how many times you don't get that thing. But how that all is part of the process for whatever reason, and whatever it took to get you to, that you are the one who played this role. I think it was supposed to be you. And kind of going off a little bit on what Vincent said. I personally, when I was watching the film, really saw the depth of the history of the character, specifically as a boxer, and how he related to it was in small asides, but how he related to other characters, hearing about other former boxers, right? Hearing about, speaking with people in Polish, like the people came up to him and spoke Polish and they knew who he was, or seeing his face on the side of the wall. There were just those moments itself, that your relationship as the character to those moments, that I felt like gave a lot of history to a world that I don't know enough about, right? The boxing world is not something I was super familiar with, but in those small moments, specifically at the bar, when both of you, you and Andrew, sit down at the bar, and then someone comes up and says something about how they were a gatekeeper, and their cousin was a gatekeeper, and just that exchange and your reaction to that, those are the moments that I really saw the history of what boxing was, and what it meant to be a former boxer, a former successful boxer at that. And I just wanted to ask before moving on to Andrew, because I promise I have questions for you too. But Vincent, can you talk a little bit about your relationship with your grandfather, who also was a boxer, and how that informed some of those decisions and some of the, shaping that story in its authenticity?
Yeah, I mean, it always goes back to the script here, and just in regards to that scene. I think Bang is offended by, I mean, it just doesn't sit right when you have somebody who is going out there entertaining, putting their life on the line, and that is how that guy is remembered, as a
Right.
keeper. And Bang, having seen the height of the sport, can differentiate that and knows that it's like this is the problem. It's like there's not that sort of regard for they're just kind of discarded later in their life, and so it doesn't sit right with him, and I think it drives quite a bit of his animosity towards people and bitterness. But
I agree. Yeah.
yeah, my own grandfather, he was a World War II vet, and in the 40s, in Saginaw, he was the Golden Gloves fighter at the Saginaw CYO, and
Wow.
I have all these old newspaper articles talking about his fights, and I don't know if I shared it with like Tim and Andrew, but I have these articles still, and it's interesting to see the journalism, how they wrote about the sport in the 40s. It's almost like, you know, they write with this, he banged them with like gravy on mashed potatoes, kind of like the way they wrote journalism back there. It was just, and the stuff that it's interesting, having grown up very close to my grandfather before he passed. I was 25, I think, when he died. And so I knew him really well. And he told a lot of the same stories over and over. And, we had a tradition, like not just with him, but my grandma and my parents, we'd watch boxing every Saturday night in the, 80s and 90s growing up. I got to just, it was like a thing that I remembered vividly now and really cherish. And it was something, he would teach you how to land, how you hit somebody, and where hit him on the chin is that's it. You hit somebody here. It was that sort of off the cuff educational stuff about boxing growing up. I was by no means a a professional fighter, but I grew up with it, and then I started going to the gyms and training and just doing it and living around it. And I learned a lot. Just, I mean, that's where you learn this sport, is you're You just go and you learn by doing it, the same way as filmmaking. You're not going to learn filmmaking by being told stuff. You're going to learn it by going out and doing it. So I just have a high respect for it, and that's why I make films, and that's why I love boxing. It's kind of, yeah.
I assume, obviously, and it sounds like it for sure, that your relationship with your grandfather was very different than the grandfather-grandson relationship in the movie. But were there
Right.
any small moments that you felt like that you added to sort of their relationship or how they spoke to each other about boxing that you felt was reminiscent of your relationship with your grandfather? Or
Um, you know, there wasn't really a similarity with Bang Bang in him. My grandpa was the sweet, lovable man, but a hard man. Like he was a sergeant
Mm,
too, and he has that sense of him growing up, but he was never, he didn't have that anger, that fire in your gut, you know?
mm,
And I think with fighters, you cannot be a boxer if you're just playing the sport. Like it's you can't play boxing. It's very dangerous, and you need that fire in your gut. And so I think the difference between them is like Bang has this, you can see that man has that fire there. Um, you know,
yeah.
my grandpa's an older sweet man.
Yeah. Just
But
sounds, yeah,
yeah,
different.
there was little ticks, and maybe through like how to educate Justin Andrews' character in the film, with how to hit to the body and things like that. He would tell me, he would, teach things like that all the time.
It's
Um,
funny calling him Justin because I feel like I only heard Tim's character being call him, what was the
Bob's.
nickname? Yeah. I was like, "Oh, oh, yeah, that's Justin, got it." Well, wonderful, so then I'll go right to Andrew because 'cause we're talking about him. Thank you, Andrew. My question then for you is what was the process getting involved with this? Was there an audition? How was that like? How did you read it for the first time? What was it like for you to approach Bang Bang?
My manager, Tara Conifant, he sent me this audition, and I read the breakdown. It was a mixed kid who's a boxer, and I don't think I got the script yet. But the audition I did get was that slap scene and
Mm,
one more scene, and I had like long curly hair, and like I wore a wife beater, and I was like, I was like, he's a boxer. Like, I'll show him I box and like I'm physically adequate. And I sent in the tape, and Vince, like, he liked my performance, but he was also like, dude, you're playing it way too charming.
mm,
Like, we don't want to see him be super physically imposing, because originally the character was supposed to be gangly and kind of freakish looking, and
which he is.
which he is in the film, aside from the gangly part. And so after Vince responded well to tape, I got a call back, and I showed him kind of a
was the
little bit.
callback, via self-tape as well, or was
I
it
think
in
it was another
person?
self tape, and then um, I got to like the final rounds, which was like me and some other kids, and that was a chem read with Tim,
Mm.
and I was just picking Vince's brain about it the whole time, like up before the callback. Like I was watching all these documentaries of boxers. I was watching Tim's movies. I was watching all Vince's movies to just kind of get the vibe of what they both bring to the table. And I actually like wrote a paper in college about uh, one of Tim's movies that he directed called The Gray Zone. So I felt very
Oh,
in there. Um, and yeah, I mean, I honestly, I was obsessed with it. So I got the script, and I read the script like 3, 4 times, and I wanted to shave my head before the callback. And Vince was like, "Relax, bro. Like, calm down." I was like, "No, I'm so dedicated." And the callback went great, and we ended up all linking up and doing this thing.
that's it.
In
Tim,
fact,
how
I told Andrew about him being cast via text. I was like, "Hey, buddy."
Ah!
Yeah.
I still have the text. It was cool.
Was
Like
it like a short text or was it like one of those little like the
I
long
was just like,
paragraphs?
"Hey, how are you?" And he's like, "Hey," and I think he's waiting, like he's just like, he
Yeah.
knows, like, all right, what am I about to hear? And I was like, you ready to do this shit?
Yeah.
Let's
Mm.
go.
Yeah,
Oh.
it was awesome.
And so how soon after you guys getting it were you able to, like, be on set filming? And was there any rehearsal process at all? I
I had
doubt
I had a
not,
month.
but
I
you had
had
a
like
month.
1 month. So I was in LA, and then Vincent moved to Texas, and I was like, "Oh, let's go." And then I started training, getting back into my boxing stuff again, which I was already kind of doing before I booked the part because I'm a little crazy. And then a month later, we were all in Covington, Kentucky, and Cincy.
Mm.
But Tim had a different experience.
Yeah, if I'd been offered this and said you need to start shooting in a month, I would have turned it down. Because I just wouldn't have been. I needed more time. I have a process I use now, which is specific to me that I've developed over many years. And for a part like this, it's pretty much 4 months to half a year minimum to get ready. Uh, just because of the distance between who and what I am and who this guy is, and needing that to feel utterly organic and seamless, and not to have the audience thinking, oh, look at this actor playing this role, but just lose themselves in the story and not think about the acting. And so I don't know how long I had Vince. It was at least 6 months. They asked me to come on, and then I came on also as a sort of I don't know what my title is, executive producer,
Mhm.
and just being a resource for Vincent in terms of other cast and then also Vincent from the moment I decided to play the role, helping to guide the training that I did as a boxer. And that's where a lot of the seepage happens that can only happen, at least for me. This is peculiar to me or specific to me. I need time for seepage. And so it was spending every day at the boxing gym, usually 1, maybe 2 days off a week, but hours at a time, talking with people, letting stuff
Mm.
in, listening to stories, going and having a meeting with the boxing guru Teddy Atlas for hours, bringing some of that stuff back to Will and Vince, and them incorporating it into the script, and just so yeah, a very different experience than Andrew's. To Andrew's credit, uh, it he's an athlete. I mean, you just look at him. He was a serious college athlete. He won't brag about this, but a very probably could have been on the WTA. Isn't that correct?
Well, if I got homeschooled at the age of 7 and did the whole tennis thing, maybe. But I also didn't grow. That's why I'm an actor. So
Um, but he's a great tennis player.
I saw
And
that, yeah.
and uh, and also just a wonderful guy. Um, and had a youthful openness to this role, and a kind of fantastically disarming humility about himself, um, even as the star of this movie. Um, so all credit to him for bringing it the way he did in a month. That would not have been possible with me in this
Well,
role.
to credit to you, Tim, though, like we didn't have 6 months. I think you had 3 months. And so to credit to you, you definitely
Mm.
dove in. I think you trained for like 6 weeks, but I
Wow.
think it was like August to October, around there, July,
Wow.
August, October is when we started. So yeah, you had about 3 months.
Wow.
So yeah.
That's amazing.
Andrew is so good looking. We were like, all right, shave the head. We cut like a slit in his eyebrow, gave him a droopy eye.
Yeah, how'd the droopy eye come about?
Uh, Tim's guy, David Afferton, who's an amazing makeup artist, who worked with Tim and Val Kilmer and stuff, he was on board with us, and we had this idea of Justin being uh, and not the prettiest, sharpest guy in there. So having the idea that he had this scar on his above his right eye, which was the eyebrow slit, and then having this droopy eye on his left eye, um, kind of brought this feeling and this character to life in a sense that it was in the script.
Yeah,
Will
I
Will
can
Will
imagine.
wrote it, but we kind of also it helped me kind of bring this character to life in a sense that was all right. Like he's walking around looking like this, and he has people staring at him, and it pisses him off, and he's got this internal anger about it. But he also doesn't feel like he's handicapped in any sort of way, and that's kind of where this violence comes from. And then Bang also can relate to that as well, and I think that's also why they kind of mesh and hit it off. Um, so yeah.
There's a wonderful just to mention Will Janowitz, the screenwriter, and and him bringing this script, and his partner Jesse Ozeri bringing this script to Vince, perfect director for this. Will really did infuse the film with boxing history, and the drop eye, and the reference to the Pittsburgh windmill, who was I mean, there's so much boxing history that comes into the film. Even the character of Bang Bang and his brother, the phenomenon of the twin fighters with the father who pushes them into the ring, is based on a family out of Oklahoma. So there's great boxing lore in the film, and in this case, Andrew brought it to life beautifully.
Yeah, it felt very real. I will admit that after watching the film, I immediately looked up and was like, "Is this a real guy? Like, was he a real boxer? Is this a real story?" And yeah, yeah, when you Google it, nothing really comes up in terms of the character, only the movie. So, I think that's a testament to what all of you put together, as well as Will's screenplay.
Yeah,
So
I love
we made our own
The Wikipedia.
Wikipedia.
I love
the
the
fake Wikipedia
Wikipedia.
page is great.
It's great, and but I must say I was a little crestfallen because in the script the record was something like 36-1, and and it talked about his graceful, impeccable movement in the ring, and once they had the genuine article in there, uh, Vincent wrote, my record went down, and it talked about my
Oh.
erratic.
Bing would have been so mad at seeing that.
No, no, no. I mean, it actually he was written undefeated, like one of the best fighters of all time, kind of thing, and it was just
I
like
did say that, yeah.
not no. To me, also, I think the way Tim's character is, it's impossible. This had nothing to really do so much as about his, Tim's ability. It was more like somebody like Bang Bang is an entertainer. He's a brawler. He's a scrappy guy, and you are not an undefeated fighter in this sport if you are an entertainer, a knockout fighter, a kind of brash, crazy guy. It just doesn't exist. The
Right.
undefeated fighters don't get hit, and they know how. They're defensive counterpunchers, and that's like Floyd Mayweather. You know, they're not exciting. They're boring to watch. And so that was one of the main reasons, Tim, that I changed that. It had nothing to do with your abilities and footwork.
Thank you guys so much for talking with me about this. Congratulations again on Tribeca. I hope the premiere is wonderful and that people see Bang Bang.
Well,
Thank
just
Thank
retitle this one, Two Mentors and an Old Schmuck.
Yeah.